Paul McCartney reveals his complicated and heartbreaking relationship with John Lennon after the Beatles breakup. John Lennon and Paul McCartney are considered the greatest songwriting partnership of all time. As of 2004, they sold over 600 million records worldwide, making them the most successful to date. Yet the events leading up to the breakup, the legal matters to dissolve the Beatles, and the public nastiness after the breakup created a rift between the duo that seemed irreparable. So after all the dust settled, how did their relationship end before John's untimely death in 1980? Tensions between the duo heated up during the recording of the White Album. They often wrote songs separately, but credits remained Lennon-McCartney. According to author Bob Spitz in the book The Beatles, the biography, McCartney tried to be civil toward Lennon. After a while, though, he snapped. "I could hear them going at it in the hall and it was terrifying," an EMI employee recalled. Paul was positively livid, accusing John of being reckless, childish, sabotaging the group. McCartney believed Lennon was not receptive to the band's feelings on the matter, with Yoko being in the studio while they were working. Lennon continued to stick by his decision to bring Yoko into the studio with him. When asked about the Beatles' relationship with Yoko, John responds, "You can quote Paul, it's probably in the papers. He said it many times at first he hated Yoko, and then he got to like her." Lennon told Rolling Stone after the breakup, "But it's too late for me, I'm for Yoko. Why should she take that kind of shit from those people?" John believed they didn't give Yoko a fair chance. He elaborates further on the feud. "They were writing about her looking miserable in the Let It Be film, but you sit through 60 sessions with the most big-headed, uptight people on earth and see what it's fucking like and be insulted just because you love someone. And George shit insulted her right to her face in the Apple office at the beginning. I'll never forgive them. I don't care what effing shit about Hare Krishna and God and Paul with his, well, I've changed me mind. I can't forgive them for that, really. Although I can't help still loving them either." After the band breaks up and the legal disputes begin to tear them apart even further, they begin to work on solo albums. In 1971, John's album Imagine is released and includes a lot of raw emotion in his lyrics. It is as complex as John himself, with a range of emotions straight from the heart, including the beautiful title track, Imagine, and then counterbalanced with his pessimistic side on Jealous Guy, and most notably on his teardown of Paul McCartney on How Do You Sleep? In a direct stab to the heart, his opening line dismisses Sgt. Pepper, as well as Paul. The song then essentially goes on to say Paul is dead on his own without the Beatles. And a further dig for his good guy image, George plays slide guitar on the track, with an unmistakable showing of solidarity with George's guitar solo. The song stuns longtime Beatles fans, and really turns out to be a low point for John in the feud, coming across too negative. John later goes on to regret the song, but admits it is a good song without the nastiness. McCartney found the song distasteful and elaborated in an interview with GQ magazine. "I remember reading an interview with Yoko who, okay, she was a big John supporter, I get that. But in this article she goes, Paul did nothing. All he ever did was book the studio." And I'm going, no. And then John does this famous song, How Do You Sleep? And he's going, "All you ever did was yesterday." And I'm going, "No, man." He continued, "But then you hear the stories from various angles, and apparently people who were in the room when John was writing that, he was getting suggestions for the lyrics off Alan Klein. So you see the atmosphere of let's get Paul, let's nail him in a song, and those things were pretty hurtful." Paul also admits to sneaking in a few lines about John and Yoko on his first solo album in 1971, specifically on his opening track, Too Many People. In an interview with Mojo in 2001, McCartney says, "He'd been doing a lot of preaching, and it got up my nose a little bit. In one song I wrote, 'Too many people preaching practices,' I think is the line. I mean, that was a little dig at John and Yoko. Oh, there was, 'You took your lucky break and broke it in two.'" Paul discussed the post-breakup sentiment.
Thing is, so much of what they held to be truth was crap. War is over. Well, no, it isn't. But I get what you're saying. War is over if you want it to be. So if enough people want war to be over, it'll be over. I'm not sure that's entirely true, but it's a great sentiment. I've been able to accept Yoko in the studio, sitting on a blanket in front of my amp. I'd worked hard to come to terms with that. But then when we broke up and everyone was now flailing around, John turned nasty. I don't really understand why. Maybe because we grew up in Liverpool, where it was always good to get in the first punch in a fight. The whole story in a nutshell is that we were having a meeting in 1969 and John showed up and said he'd met this guy, Alan Klein, who'd promised Yoko an exhibition in Syracuse. And then, matter-of-factly, John told us he was leaving the band. That's basically how it happened. It was 3-1 because the other two went with John, so it was looking like Alan Klein was going to own our entire Beatles empire. I was not too keen on that idea. John actually had Alan Klein and Yoko in the room, suggesting lyrics during writing sessions. In his song, How Do You Sleep, the line, "The only thing you did was yesterday," was apparently Alan Klein's suggestion. And John said, "Hey, great, put that in." I could see the laughs they had doing it, and I had to work very hard not to take it too seriously. But at the back of my mind, I was thinking, wait a minute. All I ever did was yesterday? I suppose that's a funny pun, but all I ever did was yesterday, Let It Be, The Long and Winding Road, Ellen Rigby, Lady Madonna. Fuck you, John.
Lennon and McCartney's friendship seemed to have come apart at the seams, with no possibility of reuniting a friendship little long with a band. It's an interesting observation that both men lost their mothers as teenagers and then developed their music partnership soon after. During the breakup, they bring their wives into their music life, replacing the Lennon-McCartney partnership. John especially would not leave Yoko's side for years. Losing their early bond that developed around the time both lost their mothers might have been more traumatic than either understood at the time. Lennon was raised by his Aunt Mimi and often exhibited a highly emotional side, while Paul was raised by his father and was usually quite stoic. Paul describes his mother's death. The worst thing about that was everyone was very stoic, everyone kept a stiff upper lip, and then one evening you'd hear my dad crying in the next room. It was tragic because we'd never heard him cry. It was a quiet, private kind of grief. So what changed and when? After several years of bitter back and forth, Lennon and McCartney first began to heal their relationship in 1974. Lennon had broken up with Yoko Ono at the time and relocated from New York to Los Angeles, which is more commonly referred to as his lost weekend. Whilst working with Harry Nilsson in the studio, Paul and Linda dropped by, which resulted in a jam session between the two. It is during this time that May Pang takes the last known photo of Lennon and McCartney together. On April 24, 1976, Paul and Linda visited John and Yoko, who had gotten back together and were living in New York at the Dakota. They enjoyed the evening together, laughing and reminiscing. John and Paul touched base with each other over the next year or so, calling each other on the phone from time to time, discussing domesticated life. Their last conversation was about creating something, but this time not classic songs, but instead a pantry staple, bread which John had been learning to bake. McCartney fondly remembered, "We could just talk about something so ordinary. There's no threat or anything. It was just two guys talking about, well, I don't know. Do you leave it, the bread, overnight, or what do you do?" And someone says, "Yeah, I leave it overnight in a hot cupboard," and you'd just be chatting. McCartney confessed that although the conversation wasn't exactly a thrilling insight into their decades-long relationship, he wouldn't change a thing about it. He added, "It was really nice, and I was so glad that we got back to that relationship that we'd always had when we were kids." He went on to comment, "We'd lived in each other's pockets for so long that it was great to get back to that."
Got to say what we know in the booth. Yes, we have to say it. Remember, this is just a football game, no matter who wins or loses. An unspeakable tragedy confirmed to us by ABC News in New York City. John Lennon, outside of his apartment building on the west side of New York City, the most famous perhaps of all of the Beatles, shot twice in the back, rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, dead on arrival. Hard to go back to the game after that news flash, which in duty bound we had to take. Frank?
McCartney is seen leaving the recording studio the day after Lennon is killed outside his apartment in New York in 1980. You can see the visibly stunned McCartney try to answer questions without being able to process much, while maintaining his stoic composure before quickly leaving.
Very shocked, it's terrible news.
How did you find out about it?
I got a phone call this morning.
From whom?
From a friend of mine.
Are you planning to go before the funeral?
I don't know yet.
Have you discussed the death with any of the other Beatles?
No,
Do you plan to?
probably, yeah.
What were you recording today?
I was just listening to some stuff, I just didn't want to sit at home.
Why?
Oh, I didn't feel like it.
What time did you hear the news?
It's this morning sometime.
Very early?
Yeah. Go now, yeah? Drag, isn't it? Okay, cheers. Bye.
Guys.
A drag isn't how the world will see it, nor can there ever be any more talk of the Beatles getting together again.
I just for days couldn't think that he was gone. McCartney recalled of his sadness and how tough it was to pass on the news to his own family. It was just a huge shock. I was at home and I got a phone call, he explained. It was early in the morning. It was just so horrific, you couldn't take it in. For me, it was just so sad that I wasn't going to see him again. McCartney on Lennon's murderer. Whether it was evil or just deranged, it was unforgivable. I think I could pretty much forgive anyone else, but I don't see why I'd want to forgive him. In Lennon's last interview before his passing, he joked about their lifelong sibling rivalry. Although many of their personal conversations remained private, Linda McCartney once revealed Lennon's last words to her husband before he died were, "Think about me every now and then, old friend." Arguably, the most successful and impactful songwriting partnership of the 20th century, Lennon and McCartney will always be inextricably tied to one another. Paul recently confessed that John still continues to inspire him and influence his music from beyond the grave. Often I'll sort of refer, "What would John think of this?" he revealed. "He'd have thought it was too soppy, so I'll change it."
Well, let me take you down, 'cause I'm going. Strawberry fields. Nothing is real. Nothing to go on. Strawberry fields.